Hello, this is Tony Heller from realclimatescience.com. Jonathan Swift said, "It is useless to attempt to reason a man out of a thing he was never reasoned into." And Benjamin Franklin said, "Whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech." Part of free speech is that the press has the ability to generate fake news articles like this one from the BBC day in and day out. And people like myself outside of the press are supposed to have an equal footing to show that the BBC is spreading misinformation. But the BBC, who are supposed to be defenders of free speech, actively promote censorship. They want everyone who tells the truth about climate to be silenced. This is somewhat of a change from 50 years ago. In 1971, the BBC Director General said, "We have a responsibility to provide a rationally based and balanced service of news which will enable adult people to make basic judgments about public policy in their capacity as voting citizens of a democracy." The moral responsibility of the broadcaster here is not simply to keep the ring open for all opinion, but to see that everybody has a chance to appear in it. And now, 50 years later, they want all dissenting opinions silenced. This goes against all of their supposed core liberal values. Frederick Douglass said, "To suppress free speech is a double wrong. It violates the rights of the hearer as well as those of the speaker. It is just as criminal to rob a man of his right to speak and hear as it would be to rob him of his money." And George Bernard Shaw said, "All censorships exist to prevent anyone from challenging current conceptions and existing institutions." The really interesting story for me is how this happened. News sources like BBC News, NPR, National Geographic, and Scientific American used to be considered respectable sources of information. But now they're all propaganda outlets actively promoting climate junk science and censoring all dissent. When I moved to Boulder 25 years ago, people had bumper stickers like these on their car, celebrating diversity and tolerance. And they all believed that questioning authority was a core value of a democracy. But this all changed in 2008 when their messiah, Barack Obama, became the authority. After Obama took office, questioning authority became a sin. It became blasphemy. Whatever Obama said was divinely inspired, it had to be true, and people on the left would not allow themselves to question it. And news sources like BBC, NPR, Scientific American, and National Geographic became the propaganda outlets. Liberals grew up believing that those journals represented their core values. So the globalists who wanted to seize control simply hijacked those news sources. They used these publications to reverse the liberals' supposed core values. Let's look at a few examples of how the left lost track of everything they'd fought for and believed in. Women's athletics fought for decades to achieve parity with men and allow women to compete on a level playing field. But now the left is convinced that men should be allowed to compete in women's athletics, which makes it impossible for women to compete. Women's athletics is much more disadvantaged now than it was 50 years ago. Letting men compete in women's athletics doesn't make any sense at any level. The left wasn't reasoned into this position, rather they were brainwashed by news sources which they trusted. For decades the left always said they were against McCarthyism, accusing other people of being Russian agents. But when the press started pushing the fake Russia collusion story in 2016, people on the left blindly accepted it because their trusted news sources like NPR told them it was true. 5 years later, now that the damage was done, NPR admits that it was all a bunch of nonsense. To any thinking person, it was obvious that the story of Russia collusion was nonsense from day one, but people on the left don't think. They just listen to their trusted sources. For decades, the left chanted, "My body, my choice." But now they demand forced medical intervention by government because NPR tells them they're supposed to believe that. It's impossible to reason these people out of their nonsensical positions because they were never reasoned into them. They were propagandized and brainwashed by their trusted news sources into going against all of their prior core values. They were no longer in control or even aware of their own behavior. Toto thinks this is the most interesting part of the globalist coup against civilization. You can visit Toto, Kyrie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.